Ladies and gentlemen, go for our wild, wild ride with the Honey Badgers. But beware, the sweetest kittens have the sharpest claws. For your own safety, strap yourself in and hold onto something as we enter the Pussycat cast. Taboo topics.
Wait a second. Men are human too.
Marginalized men. Uncomfortable truths. You suck! The Pussycats aren't afraid of heavy lifting.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This week's Verbal Valkyries are our polecat punster turned part-time pussycat pugilist, Hannah, the principled, passionate, plucky, and pleasant Prim Reaper, the smokin' and drankin' rantcirker herself, Karen Strawn, and me.
There was no alliteration there.
No,
oh my God.
I just, My
dog just stole a bottle of vodka. Just hang on a second.
And me, the pickle and egg, apparently, in this clam bake, myself, the Supreme Doge in charge. Today we have a collection of interesting stories that we're going to look at. So, without further ado, allow me to please jump right into the topics. Oh my God, why? First, we have an opinion piece by from Quora.com by Camila S. Espinoza, certified Chilean midwife. It's a very specific job and background. She has a little bit called, "Why is disagreeing with a woman's perspective on gender issues an easy way to lose a friendship, but rarely the other way around? As a man, you need to take for granted that any disadvantages and lived experience you have need to be qualified as valid by a woman. The same does not apply to women." From men's perspective. So Camila S. Espinoza writes, oh, you're going to love this. This is great. "Let me tell you a little story. John and Susan are two friends. Susan is on her way to go meet John for ice cream. It's a beautiful and hot summer day, and Susan is getting ready. It's so hot out that a tank top and shorts would definitely help, but then Susan remembers that there's a construction site nearby. And what if John and she end up going to a bar afterward and it gets late? She can't walk home in those shorts anyway, and she won't ask John to accompany her home. He doesn't have a car and lives in the opposite direction. She could get a cab, but she'd have a similar problem. She'd have to pretend to be texting or talking to give the illusion that someone knows that she's in that cab. It's too much work, so she might just change. Maybe a dress? She puts it on and turns in one direction and the other in front of the mirror. Walks a few steps while twisting her neck to check if the hem raises up too much. Yeah, maybe not. A little better than the shorts, but not great. It's getting late and she has to go, so she settles for jeans. She'll wear jeans with this heat, but it's safer. Susan gets out of the house, walks fast and with a purpose. And as she passes next to the construction site, she gets catcalled, loudly. In the next block, a man follows her, gets close, and starts speaking in her ear. By the time she meets John, she is sweaty from all the heat, still a little scared, and mad. Very mad. She shares this experience with John, since John is her friend. She tells him all about how she tried her best to choose an outfit that would prevent this from happening. How this happened anyway because it's not about the clothes or about the woman. This is not a problem women can solve because the problem lies in rape culture and misogyny and how women are perceived by men living in this society. So John says...
I can't anymore. I can't.
I'm
done.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no,
Can I say something? Can I say something? I'm sorry. The scientist in me is dying. I will slap my big dick of research on this table right now in a huge microaggression. Just like swap, just pull it out and slam it on the table. Because I have a study that shows that when they were interviewing, etc., asking perpetrators of rape in courtrooms over and over, what prompted you to go after this woman? The way she was dressed did not come up once, motherfuckers. that's not what they look for. In fact, a woman who is dressed more modestly will be attacked more because she's perceived as less confident and therefore more of a prey and a victim, for fuck's sake. Okay.
On top of it, I just want to say that if you're actually going to slam your giant dick onto the table, that's a macroaggression.
A dick like that is
that is true.
It would be Richard Rawls, but it would be a gigantoaggression.
I would actually say that yes. I mean, like there are some things like wearing high heels and not knowing how to walk in them, being wobbly, that would make you look like you're vulnerable. But dressing in a provocative manner, it might get you catcalls and stuff like that. But it's not going to target you in terms of an actual rapist thinking that you're a good target, because it expresses confidence, right?
No, in fact, it's over and over and over again. I have to say this: the predatory end of humanity, male or female, is that they're bullies, just at heart, bullies. That is what they do. They go for the weak. The moment you stand up to them, you're not the weak anymore. You stand up by not caring about what they're looking at. You stand up by not caring about what they say. And it's stupid to advise women to continue to live as vulnerable, scared kittens in response to this.
If you're listening to this after the live show and you want to hear the full stream, go to www.honeybadgerradio.com for our unabridged podcasts, or look up to the right of this video. There's a link to go directly to the unabridged version on YouTube.
The reason that she didn't say no wasn't because she was frozen, but because she wanted to have sex with the guy. And then she's in the courtroom trying to have all of that not talked about because she wants to accuse him of rape. That's why this stuff exists. It is not because somebody comes out and says, well, women dress a certain way and they're going to get raped. It's not because somebody comes out and says that women were asking for it with their behavior. It's because somebody comes out and says, when a woman goes out and takes step after step after step to get a guy into her bed or to get into a guy's bed and then has sex with him, she has not been raped.
Agreed.
That is what they're arguing against, and that is why they want to get rid of female agency.
Well, what frustrates me too about this whole argument about agency is that when you are being victimized, right, in whatever way, whether it's a sexual assault or just like a physical assault, or or you feel like you're in your divorce, you're being victimized by your ex-spouse, right? Whatever, right? When you feel like you have agency, right, it is so much easier to get over that psychologically. It makes the entire process of psychological recovery easier and shorter, and because you have maintained a sense of your own power throughout the entire process of what happened to you, right? And you were able to say, I gave it my all. I tried everything I could, right? And okay, it wasn't good enough, but I gave it my all. As opposed to, there were all of these things I could have tried, right? And I didn't. And I didn't because I was a coward, or I didn't because I didn't have the personal strength, or I didn't because I didn't have the wherewithal, or I didn't because I just didn't have the strength of character. Right? And when you admit that to yourself, right, that you had no power in that situation, even if the power, there is a power imbalance there, right? If you admit to yourself that you had no power whatsoever to stop what happened, or to change what happened, or to ameliorate what happened, or to mitigate what happened, or to minimize what happened, right? to make it less bad, right? If you admit that to yourself, that you are admitting that you have no power. This is and the whole fucking thing that these feminists are pushing is to get women to feel like they have no fucking power, and it doesn't help any of these women, because it is the women and individuals, whether you were victimized in a plane crash or a car accident or a fucking, you were mugged or whatever. It is the people who did everything right, and it was random chance. You were struck by lightning, sitting on your sofa in your living room on a clear day, right? It is those people who end up holding themselves up in their apartment for the next 20 years and never sticking their face out. Because if there's nothing you could think of that you could have done to prevent what happened, right, then there is nothing you can ever do to prevent it happening again, right? And I have always said that the entire question of victim blaming, the very first person who blames the victim is the victim herself or himself, right? They are the ones, because they are psychologically programmed, they are evolutionarily programmed to identify the things that they did, the decisions that they had power over, right, that contributed to them being put in a position where they were vulnerable to something like that happening to them, right? And their brain will force them to look at every single fucking thing they did that day, even if it's like, I took 50th Street instead of 75th Street, and that's why I got T-boned by that fucking drunk driver, right? They will fucking examine minutely every single fucking decision they made leading up to what happened, and particularly if it was really traumatizing to them, if it was like a really, really severe incident, they got T-boned by a fucking drunk driver and their kid died or something like that, right? They will look at every fucking decision that they made. Did I check both ways after the light turned green, right? Was I being a defensive driver? All of those things, right? Because their brain is trying to force them to learn a lesson from it so that it doesn't ever happen to them again, right? That is a survival mechanism. That is healthy psychology. And we have feminist advocates and therapists saying to these women, you should not do that. There was nothing you could have done.
This is actually the top answer to this question. Why is disagreeing with a woman's perspective on gender issues an easy way to lose a friendship, but rarely the other way around? This answer and this story is the top answer.
So the short version is because women do not have the capacity to accept that perspectives other than their own exist and could be valid.
So it would seem, although
Yeah.
I find it really interesting because I think before the show started, I was talking about this story, and you guys said my experience is the opposite, and I was going to say mine is too. Essentially, if you don't toe the line when it comes to feminist belief, you will be socially ostracized instantly. And it's not just feminist belief, it's just social justice warrior dogma in general. You have to toe the line on that if you want to keep a friendship sometimes. It's fucked up, but it happens. And this is usually the way it goes. So I find the question itself a bit strange. One woman who molested female on Alaska Airlines plane sentence. What was supposed to have been a routine flight from Las Vegas to Portland ended up being a disturbing ordeal for a 19-year-old Oregon teen. The teenager, whose name has not been made public, was repeatedly advanced upon by a fellow passenger seated next to her. The fellow passenger first began taking photos of the 19-year-old before attempting to ply her with alcohol, which was illegally smuggled aboard the flight. Despite her repeated protests, the passenger only seemed to grow bolder. The victim soon found herself being groped, licked, and eventually mounted with the intention of having sex by the perpetrator. Finally, having had enough, the 19-year-old pushed her abuser off and alerted the flight crew as her abuser hurled insults and curses at her. If you believe that, you can guess the gender of the perpetrator in this story by that description. You may be in for a shock, as the 19-year-old abuser was female. Heidi McKinney, age 27 and also native to Oregon, found herself in court for her antics aboard an Alaskan Airlines flight in May of 2016. As part of the plea agreement, the charge of abusive sexual conduct was dropped down to assault with intent to commit a felony. The victim, still too shaken and emotional to read her own impact statement, opted to have her grandmother read it instead. She wrote, quote, I personally don't feel you know how much damage you have caused me. And that day you messed with my head and took something from me that I will never get back. The victim also wrote that she blamed herself for being too friendly towards McKinney initially, and that she forgives her if only to help herself move on, and hopes that McKinney gets the help that she needs. On June 19th, McKinney, who had previously been arrested in 2008 and 2015 for drunk driving, was sentenced to 8 months of home detention, 3 years of probation, and to pay the victim $3,000 restitution.
They are not interested in concealing male victims when those male victims are victims of other males. What they are interested in is concealing male perpetrators, which leaves a lot of bisexual women at risk. It leaves a lot of lesbian women at risk. It leaves them without recourse, without redress under the law, without help and assistance, right? It leaves them twisting in the fucking wind, right? Mm-hmm. And feminism is willing to cut those marginalized women, lesbian women, right? Trans women, trans men, right? Bisexual women, willing to cut them all fucking loose as if their perpetrator is a woman.
Today at 1 p.m., Betsy DeVos met with two men who alleged that they were falsely accused of rape and railroaded by their universities, as well as members of Stop Abusive Violent Environments, or SAVE, the National Coalition for Men, NCFM, and Families Advocating for Campus Equality, FACE. She also met with various survivors of sexual assault, as well as some higher education officials and sexual assault experts. Some women's rights advocates are concerned specifically about the meeting with the men's rights activists and the dialogue surrounding sexual assault victims. Laura Dunn, founder of Serve Justice, claims in a statement to The Independent that, quote, "There is a difference between due process advocates and men's rights groups that are often rape denialists that promote the sexist rape myth that most women lie. While it is appropriate to discuss and improve due process protections on campus, this should not come at the expense of survivors' rights, nor be couched in a mentality that victims are lying about their experiences." End quote. Many victim advocate organizations and news outlets continue to push the many times debunked 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 sexual assault statistic, and continue to use shoddy research when examining the issue of sexual assault and domestic violence on college campuses. Needless to say, these same entities are not pleased that men's rights activists are getting a chance to speak to the Secretary of Education. At a press conference later in the afternoon, Betsy DeVos shared her thoughts on the, quote, emotionally draining day she had with the various listening sessions. DeVos is very willing to meet with all sides regarding these issues. Regarding the Dear Colleague letter of 2011, DeVos has not taken a stance one way or another regarding the Department of Education rescinding those guidelines. However, it seems that DeVos is encouraging legislators to address these issues. She said, quote, "There has been a lack of clarity in this area, and I think it's time for Congress to address this. It's Congress's role to make laws, and so I think it's high time for Congress to look at the law that was passed in 1972 and address these issues and finally speak to them and clarify them." End quote. So while Betsy DeVos has not taken a stance on rescinding the extremely controversial Dear Colleague letter of 2011, her willingness to meet with people critical of how colleges have conducted Title IX investigations gives some hope to men on college campuses who are wrongly accused of sexual assault. Greater due process protections would be most welcome, whether it be the Department of Education, Congress, or even individual state governments. Change is coming. All right, Prim, I think you were the first one in, but I'm not sure. Or it was Hannah. How long ago did I start?
It's Hannah. That was for the last one.
Okay, okay. Well, in that case, all right. Notice how opponents of the men's rights movement have to strawman the argument that women can and do lie about sexual assault. And when they do, it's damaging to their targets by inserting the word most into the argument, where we have not made our argument ever that most women lie about sexual assault. Just that it happens, that when it does happen, it's damaging, and that it is a significant problem. It's significant even if it were as rare as feminists say it is. And the reason that they say it's rare, and the reason that they're putting most into this argument to strawman it, is that for years they responded to it being pointed out that it is damaging when it happens, it's life-wrecking when it happens, by claiming that it wasn't an important issue on the basis of rarity, an assertion that they have never been able to back with anything more than a claim Susan Brown Miller made. And her claim wasn't based on statistics, it was based on the opinion of one cop. So here we have a group who is claiming that if a terrible thing is rare, it's okay to sacrifice those few men they think it's happening to for the benefit of the many women that they think are being sexually abused by so many men. And even when it turns out that it's not as rare as they claim, even in pointing out that you know, there are instances where the FBI, for instance, has found when they check DNA or when they check other evidence, that approximately 1 in 4 cases where it's contested, the guy that is accused is at the very least not the guy who committed the crime, if the crime was committed. They've got the wrong guy in 1 in 4 of those cases. So there's at least a 25% chance in some instances that the person being accused is innocent. There's been other researchers that actually have shown a majority. And there's questions about, you know, all of the various studies and all of the various instances of research. But what that tells us is that the number could be, at the lowest, 8%, and it could be as high as 65%. And depending on the society, sometimes it's proved that it is. For instance, in India, they do have a 65 to 85% false accusation rate in their legal system for rape cases. So in this idea that our main argument is that most women lie is not true. And at the same time, it is significant that some women do. If you go to www.usa.gov/elected-officials, there are 2 places you can click, one for U.S. senators, one for U.S. representatives. You can also contact state governors and state legislators. There's an online contact form for the White House on that page. You can, if you really want to get into it, you can contact mayors and county executives from this page as well. You can learn how to contact everybody. The most important people at this point to contact, though, are going to be the president, the senators, and the representatives at the U.S. level, because that's where this law is, and that's where it's going to have to be addressed. Again, that's usa.gov/elected-officials.
I guess that's really it. I want to thank Karen, Hannah, Prim, and Anna for coming on today and talking about these important topics, especially this stuff going on with Betsy DeVos. I think that I am filled with optimism, but we'll see. This thing could be overturned, so let's hope that it is, and it'll be a massive victory for us. In the meantime, we are going to now move on to the after show, where we'll be discussing another article which is so incredibly demonic I can't even explain. It's entitled, "I'm Done Pretending Men Are Safe, Even My Own Sons." This is not parody, this is not a Poe, this is a woman who fears men so much she even fears her own kids. So we'll be reading that in the after show. If you want to join us in the after show, please consider becoming a patron at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And we will see you next time.